AITA. Am I the a-hole for not telling my wife my parents were cousins? My parents have been happily married for 30 years, neither of them had known they were cousins and found out 2 years into their relationship. Their mothers, who are sisters, had lost contact after each of them ran away, at different times, from their strict super-religious household. The day they met, it was almost in an instant that both of them knew they were each other's siblings. That day was filled with a lot of chaos, and ended up with the breakup of my parents. However, 5 months into the breakup, they both realized they couldn't do it and they got back together. My mother's mom supported them, whereas my father's mom had not and disowned my father. A year after that my parents got married, and had my sister and I. Just a month ago, my father had passed away from heart complications. It hit my mother really hard and she was absolutely broken. This week we had a tiny funeral, only 10 people, for him, and everything was going smooth, until his mother showed up. My aunt had brought her along. This created a huge shouting match with my mother, aunt, and grandmother. In this they disclosed the fact my parents were cousins. My wife looked at me in shock and asked me if that was true. I told her yeah, and she said to wait for a conversation about this when we got home. Well, we got home and she just started crying, saying that it was disgusting that I was a product of incest, and how I couldn't have told her and why I didn't trust her. I truly don't believe that my parents' relationship defines me as a person. I've tried to ignore that fact for my whole life, and it was a really uncomfortable topic. I told her that I had the right to keep it to myself, but she just screamed that I didn't and that what if we had a child, and it could have complications because of me, although the chances of that are extremely low. I still stood my ground that it was my right, but my wife just continued to cry as she told me that we were going to take a break. I'm heartbroken because I didn't think that part of me defined me, and to know she was taking a break from me because of that reason really hurt. I talked to my sister about this, and she said that I was the a-hole and should have told my wife, as she told her husband. She said it's not something I should have hidden, because it was a deal breaker for many. I'm really tired of having my parents' relationship define me as a person, and I don't think I'm the a-hole for not telling my wife. I haven't had contact with my wife, but I know that if she were to forgive me I'd have to apologize, and even though it may sound so petty that I'm putting our relationship on the line, I need to give any apology. I'd like another view on this because my mind's racing. Also throw away because my wife knows my Reddit. Well, your parents' relationship does define you, if you think you have to keep it a secret. And incest being a huge taboo, and with health ramifications, one would think it ought to be mentioned to the person you are getting married to. So, yeah, YTA. There's a lot of people saying OP is the a-hole, but I don't think anyone here is an expert on incest and genetic diseases. I'm pretty sure it's worth looking into how common a disease is 2 generations after cousins pair up, because I really suspect it is not as bad as people think. Should my girlfriend break up with me because I haven't told her that my grandmother had Parkinson's, or that my dad has high blood pressure, or that a sibling has a thyroid issue? Both of those are more likely to be passed down to a kid, I think. Not talking about it doesn't mean it's a secret. NTA. Not the a-hole. But the wife is for wanting a divorce over something OP has no control. NAH. No a-holes here. I understand that your wife is upset, and you should have shared that info. However, you are not the product of incest. There are very unlikely to be health issues with your children due to this. Your wife needs to get her facts straight. You should have told her, but this reaction is based on prejudice and she needs to recognize that. I think this is above Reddit's pay grade, and I know this gets suggested way too often in here, but you and your wife need counseling. I wanted to say no a-holes, because I can see why you don't want to bring it up, and I'm the UK, I believe first cousins are actually allowed to marry. But I absolutely get why she would want to know upfront, so she can decide for herself if it was a problem. I think, softly, YTA. You're the a-hole because it should have come up before the wedding. YTA. First cousins having children has a higher risk of something going wrong with the child, and I think your wife is correct when she said that can affect any children you have too. And like your wife said, that's something you should have trusted her enough to tell her. Keeping such a big secret is essentially lying. If you want to keep this relationship, then you do need to apologize for lying to your wife about something that would be a deal breaker for many. You took that choice from her. Just like your sister said. Edit. I stand corrected. There's practically no risk to their potential future children. But I still think OP is the a-hole for hiding this from his wife. My parents had something similar happen. Not first cousins but third, I think. Found out on their honeymoon, and already had my brother. YTA. You hid something from your wife that could affect your children, small chance or no. On top of that, she had to find out through drama. I told my husband cause I knew there was a risk of someone else mentioning it, mostly out of cruelty, and it was better on him to find out where he can calmly process it. Your parents' relationship doesn't define you, but the fact that your mother and father are also your second cousins, is something you should mention to your wife. Did you think she wouldn't find out? How can it affect their children? It really can't. The dangerous thing about incest is a rare, faulty, but non-dominant gene being present in the family's gene pool without anyone knowing. Let's call this faulty gene G. Everybody has two genes of every type, one from each parent. So most people would have GG, with G being the corresponding healthy gene, but Family Smith might have some members that have GG. They do not know this because G is dominant and so G does not get to cause a syndrome. Most Smiths go and marry a GG person. They match genes and have kids. These kids are either GG or GG and thus healthy. Now if SMITH1, GG, was to have a kid with SMITH2, GG, their kids would have one of these combinations, GG, GG, and GG. The GG and GG kids are healthy, the GG kid unfortunately is not because they lack a healthy G gene. Now, obviously OP does not have some horrible syndrome. If there even is a faulty gene in his grandmother's family, he did not get two copies of it. He has GG or GG. Now he meets his wife. She is probably GG as the G syndrome is very rare. So GG and GG mix and their kids can only have one of these combinations, GG, GG. Those give healthy kids. Literally nothing happened. Even if OP had been the unlucky GG kid from above, but been able to and willing to procreate, his kids with a GG wife would all have been GG and healthy as they get one copy from each parent. Incest does not taint genes so that even a generation later you get sick individuals. What incest does is to make it more likely that a kid born to close relatives will have two faulty copies of a gene. OP and his wife are not close relatives. Their chances of having sick kids is exactly the same as that of any other healthy couple. With society freaking out and being so uninformed about incest as they are, I do not blame OP for keeping this to himself. It does not define him and it is not medically relevant for his future kids. NTA. It was an honest accident between your parents. Historically speaking, marriage between first cousins isn't that weird. The problems come in when extended family lives closer together, and cousins are raised more like siblings, and when you have repeated cousin marriages over generations, because then you have to worry about health issues. Your wife is blowing this way out of proportion. I'd forgive an initial you would. But she's acting like you've completely betrayed her, which is ridiculous. NTA. Your wife gave you a good reason to hide it? She immediately said that you were disgusting. I understand why you didn't tell her. I think the health problem thing is only gonna be a problem, if your parents were siblings instead of cousins, or if incest was taking place over several different generations. I mean, your parents probably shouldn't have had kids after they found out they were cousins, but you're already here.